59 million children around the world are out of school. Disabled children living in extreme poverty are disproportionately excluded. Disability stigma exists in every society. In rural Tanzania, limited information and awareness around disability means disabled children are often considered weak, worthless, and in some cases, subhuman. Stigma persists that disabled children cannot learn, and children with disabilities rarely go to school. Tanzania is a big and diverse country in Eastern Africa. Here we are in Mkwani Primary School in Kibaha, Eastern Tanzania. There are 25 children here with all sorts of disabilities, but only 2 teachers to support them. Karimu Abdallah has a hearing impairment and no one to teach him sign language. When we asked him if he had any friends at the school, he answered without hesitating, no.
In our country, especially in rural areas, they have a negative perception on disabilities. Most of them, they are afraid to expose their kids, and some of them, they kill their kids because of disabilities.
People with disabilities have been forgotten by society.
Most of our schools, they don't have skilled teachers on disabilities. There is no infrastructures which is accessible to children with disabilities. So parents, they feel that there is no need of taking kids to school.
In Tanzania, AD International has been partnering with organizations of disability activists to deliver inclusive primary education since 2012. One of the key things we've learned is the vital importance of a good pre-primary education. Without this foundation year of learning, the disabled children that do go to primary school often lag behind their peers. That's why we are now supporting disability activists to pilot inclusive pre-primary education in 252 schools. Together, we want to prove how sustainable change can be made.
Preschool is really important for a child because it is the foundation. It's where you start. There are huge advantages of pre-primary education for children with disabilities. If you identify a disability when the child is still young, it is easier for that child to learn things faster because their brain is in the learning stage.
We envision the society that is aware about the importance of pre-primary education to children with disabilities. We want to see that there's no discrimination, there is no name calling of the children with disabilities. That's why we are starting early. We are starting in the pre-primary units.
We are working with disability activists and the Ministry of Education to make the education system inclusive of disabled children. We train teachers to go door to door and find disabled children who are often hidden away at home. The disability activists we support work with parents to help them see their child has the potential to learn and flourish. We help teachers and staff access the skills, tools, and resources they need to make schools accessible. Disability activists work with power holders from the village to the national level to implement inclusive education policies and embed inclusion in their systems.
AD International has given us the courage to implement this project here. The project didn't come from above, but was generated from below. AD International built our capacity to be able to defend the disabled everywhere.
AD International built our capacity so we can engage the county education officer to look at the infrastructure of schools and classrooms. We ask them to increase their budget for inclusive infrastructure in classrooms, toilets and stairs.
Walikuwa wanashirikiana na IDD
AD International works with organisations of disabled people. They go to the villages to raise awareness about disability rights. They advise the community not to hide disabled children away, but to send them to school instead.
When parents decide to lock their child in the house and the child doesn't interact and learn from other children, it's very damaging. Loneliness will make the child even more disabled. When you isolate a child, they will end up feeling different from other children. But when you put them together, they see that they are the same and that there is no difference.
Parents are now starting to understand that children living with disabilities deserve an education.
Through our previous work on inclusive primary education, we have enrolled 808 children into school.
My name is Amina, and I'm 8 years old.
I realised that Amina faced challenges when she was young, around 2 years old. If you called her from behind when she was facing away from you, she would not turn. That's when I realised Amina was deaf. Our community takes Amina as stupid. Some adults and children even call her Amina the stupid. But she is not stupid. She is a human being, just like you.
My daughter Amina has been going to school for 2 years. I can clearly see her improvements, and for this I am grateful.
I like school very much, especially reading. When I grow up, I want to be a nurse.
I'm Ramadani Suleimani. I'm 75 years old, and Adam is my grandson, son of my daughter. As you can see, all my grandchildren live here, and life is hard. But I could never discriminate Adam among all my other grandchildren, abled and disabled.
Adam has behavioural issues and a hearing impairment.
My name is Adam and I am 12 years old. At school, I love reading, maths and writing. I'm really happy to go to school. There are so many things you can do.
I took him to school when he was 5 years old, so that he could get educated. At school, he meets his mates and gets enlightened instead of staying at home.
I'm Anna Richard, and I'm 14 years old. I have lots of friends at school, and I love playing football with them.
Mlandizi Primary School has 70 children with disabilities. Amari is one of them. He has a physical and intellectual impairment and is 15 years old.
My son's disability started when he was 8 months old. He got sick with pneumonia. He had a twin, but at 6 months the other passed away and only Amari survived. When he was younger, he couldn't sit down, couldn't stand up. He was just lying down, always lying down. When he gets sick, I don't always have money to take him to hospital.
Parents can't let their disabled child go to school on their own. They usually ask someone to bring the pupils to school and to collect them afterwards. But if nobody is free, then that child will not attend class.
Sometimes Amari's mum doesn't have the money to pay for his bus fare to school. On those days, she has to carry him on her shoulders. The school is 8 kilometers away, and they can't afford a wheelchair.
It's so important for him to get an education like all the other children. When he saw his sister going to school, he told me, "Mum, I also want to go and learn to read." I take him to school because I believe that with an education, he can have the chance of a future.
AD International helps disabled children to attend school. They help us identify different disabilities and create inclusive classes. In our early classes, we start with singing, playing and counting. Later, we explore reading and writing before they enter Class 1. Pupils learn through their peers. They build skills and confidence, and they learn to see themselves as humans, like all the other children.
Many of our pupils have a history of isolating themselves at home. But at school, they learn to interact with other children.
People living with albinism are very poor because they're often too afraid to leave their house. They lack the confidence to go out and get an education. In rural Tanzania, stigma persists that people with albinism have magical powers. They're kidnapped and killed for their body parts.
When I gave birth to Muini, many people thought he was a doll. I had to take the covers off him and show people he wasn't a doll. He was a human being like everyone else. When Muini travels to school, I remind him, don't accept a ride from someone on a motorbike or a bicycle. And if someone approaches you, just shout out loudly because nowadays many people are bad. When Muini was younger, the other children used to fear him. They would cry whenever they saw him. But I thank God, most of them have got used to him, and he interacts with other pupils at school.
The first time I went to school, I was really happy. I wanted to read like the other children. When the teacher asked me questions, I can answer them well.
I decided to stand up and defend the rights of people with disabilities so we can be recognized as part of our community. If we didn't have a group where we could speak out, we would be left without any help. We can't defend our rights as individuals, but if we form groups, we can support each other and claim our rights together.
AD International's contribution is huge. More and more disabled children are now going to school, and I credit this to AD International's efforts.
Changing the mind of a person is a long process. It's not a one-time thing to do. There are some people who are still hiding their children they are closed in their houses. Simply they think it is a curse.
Millions of disabled children are still condemned to a life without education and a future of poverty and exclusion. We must act now to end this. With your support, we can help organizations of disability activists continue their work to get disabled children into school, where they belong. If the campaign for global disability equality inspires and moves you, then we hope you will join us.